talking about how to land a TEDx. So I'm just going to give you a sneaky peek behind the scenes of how to land a TEDx, because Corey Poirier is like a 4 times TEDx speaker, plus so much more. So I hope you enjoy this. I probably won't be able to show all of it because it is in Blue Talks event. It's actually called the Experts Bootcamp, which you can go and sign up for yourself. And let's hear some more of this now.
Kelly Filardo, who may or may not be with us right now. If she's not now, she's maybe going to be here later. I can't remember if she's with us today or tomorrow. She was here earlier, I saw. So Kelly, she actually signed up for a program we had a long time ago. And one of the things we recommended was what I just shared with you. Put your idea. So I'm going to share Kelly's idea. I know Kelly said before I can share it. And basically, Kelly, if you see her later on today or tomorrow, Kelly was burned at the age of 2, and she has scars over some of her body. And so Kelly was bullied in school. And fast forward a number of years, and everybody here knows what the Me Too movement was, I'm thinking. And so Kelly had 2 boys who, and she has a daughter too, but she had 2 boys that were impacted by the Me Too movement. They were blamed for something that it was proven they didn't do, but they were blamed, and you know what happens, right? Then they carry that around with them. So Kelly said, I want to do a TED Talk about the Me Too movement for boys. And so she said, what do you think? And so she is working with me already, and I said, Kelly, here's what I would do. Remember in week 1 what we said? Test your idea. So put it out to your community. She said, what do you think? And I said, my answer is, I think, Kelly, you're going to get bullied a lot. I think this talk is going to be very controversial, and you're going to get attacked online. And Kelly, I'm not saying you shouldn't want to do that. Somebody needs to share this message probably. By the way, I don't think anybody ever ended up sharing that message. Somebody needs to share this message. It needs a voice, but you have to ask yourself if you're willing to take the repercussions of being that voice. So she said, I don't think I am if that's the result. I said, then ask your community and see what they say. So Kelly put it out and said, what do you guys think? I want to do this talk. And it was a resounding, oh my gosh, Kelly, this is not you. Don't do this talk, and so on. And people were saying, this talk should be done, but not by you, basically. And so I said to Kelly, okay, now you got feedback. But guess what? This is your chance, your one chance to get more feedback. So then she said, well, I have another idea. And the talk title is Ugly is Still Beautiful. And ugly is an acronym. So you can watch her TED Talk to see what that means. I'm not going to dissect it here, but basically it was her way of saying, you're still beautiful and your scar is still beautiful. And so I said, Kelly, I think this is your talk, but I don't want to be the judgment of that. One person isn't enough of a focus group. Put it out the same way you did the other one and do the exact same thing. So Kelly put it out and said, hey, everybody, thinking of doing this talk instead of the one I told you about. What do you think? It was like the opposite. 90%, Kelly, this is you. You got to do this talk. And then lo and behold, and she asked, anybody know any TEDx organizers? People were tagged in. Lo and behold, Kelly gets a private message on Facebook. Somebody says, Kelly, I didn't know you wanted to do a TED Talk. You're in. You don't even have to apply. You're in. And they booked her for her first TED Talk. By the way, Kelly used another thing we taught her, and a few weeks, maybe a month later, she landed her second TED Talk using similar things. But the reason I tell you guys this is that strategy I just shared with you was responsible for Kelly's TED Talk, period, full stop. Patrick Brome, who's been at one of our past boot camps, Patrick also used what he learned during this boot camp as well, during these strategies, and Patrick landed his TED Talk right after. So I'm telling you this to say, what I'm sharing with you guys isn't theory here. It isn't like, oh, this could work for somebody. Oh, for somebody else it could work. It's not coming up at the moment, but that's the talk. So your first strategy is, as I said, announce it to the world and say, here's what I'm looking for help with, guys. Help, please. So that's your first one. Your second one, which again relates to community, but it's a different approach. So the next part you want to do is you want to use social media. So again, community, use social media to find who the organizer is for the TEDx you want to apply for. So here's another thing that people get wrong. Okay, first of all, here's what happens. Most people jump onto a TED website and go scroll down and go nominate myself. They click the button, they start nominating themselves. They spend 15 minutes in the application, they press send, and then they go, yay. And then they wait and wait and wait, and they get no reply. Now, again, and I'm going to be honest with you, after looking at a lot of how you do this is hard to teach in a short amount of time because it's what you say specifically, but I could reach out, like I do that, I could reach out on behalf of Laura and say, hey, I'm a multiple time TEDx speaker. I'm not looking to land TEDx, but I know somebody who I would like to recommend. And then I could go from there. I won't go into all the details, but the point is If I can find the organizer, which there's a way to do it. You either have to figure it out yourself over some time, or me show you and probably take a half hour or more. But the point is, there's a way I can find the organizer of any TEDx. And if I can reach them directly, that is another up level. So your takeaway from that is, if you can find out the TEDx organizer's name, if you can find out how to reach them directly, don't assume they're going to let you avoid the application process and stuff like that. You'll still have to go through that stuff, but now you're talking to the person that can say yes and flip the switch and book you immediately. So there's a lady named Kira who worked with us, and Kira, I helped Kira with her TEDx, and she never met them, never talked to them, never submitted the application. And I don't even know if that's, I think you're supposed to submit an application, but never did any of that before she was speaking on their stage. And that's because it was directly through the organizer. So your second hack or shortcut is figure out who the organizer is and figure out a way to compellingly reach that person and know what to say to them. The third strategy, and this one is even an easier hack to do in a lot of ways, is see the top up there. Would you guys agree that if you were in that top crowd, and it's pretty fuzzy, but you guys get the point, if you were in that top crowd, it'd be hard to stand out. It would be hard for somebody to see you and say, oh, that's so-and-so, unless they had a hat like Laura has on right now, or they had like a bright red hat or something. Or if there was the red hat ladies and they were all walking together. But otherwise, if you're in a group like that, it's hard to stand out. Down at the bottom, if you go over to the corner where there's one other person and start talking to them, you're probably going to stand out more. Is that correct? They're going to see you, all that kind of stuff. So here's your third hack for landing, is go where there's less competition. So what do I mean by that? Some TEDx events are huge, 2,000 applicants. Some TEDx's, 100 applicants. Is it safe to say that if you go for the one that has 100 applicants, your odds are better than 2,000? I think simple math tells you. So if you go for the one that's 2,000, you don't know anybody, you submit like normal, everything is equal. If that's what you do, your odds are less than 1%. I'm not a big fan of those odds. Those are pretty low odds. Your odds are less than 1%. If you do what I just said, your odds now could go higher, but they're probably at least as high as 10%. They could be higher because you've gone to one with a lot less people. So again, another third strategy is, and again, the variable is figuring out which ones are the smaller ones, but what you do, apply at the smaller TEDx's. Why? Because I think you guys realize now, it doesn't matter if it's a bigger or a smaller one. Nobody asked you where it was at. TED is so prestigious and has built such goodwill that people don't even ask where did the talk take place. They just say, oh, you're a TEDx speaker? So in other words, you can go to a smaller venue and get all the same benefits. So that's your third strategy. That's wrong there with the strategy number 3. That should be a different number. The next thing I want to move on. So before I move too far, you can tell how high energy I am now. I love this stuff. I'm passionate about this. And I know what this can do for you. But hopefully those 3 strategies give you some working collateral, some things that you can do starting right away. You know, I said, and I'll never be able to, in a short amount of time, show you here's all the steps for how to do everything I said, but at least knowing if you find the organizer, if you craft something compelling and ask your community if they know someone, if you apply at smaller ones, just knowing those strategies will increase your odds. Again, where the still variable is knowing what to say on the application, because almost all of them will make you fill out an application, knowing how to reach the organizer. There are still things that you have to do. And I had to learn these things in the trenches. The other side is delivering your talk. So delivering your talk is just as important, right? Because you guys know this, I think. A TED is always under 18 minutes. So typically speaking, people don't, and again, I can touch on this in a couple minutes, but people often wonder what's the difference between TED and TEDx. Well, when you hear somebody say, oh, I'm doing an 8-minute TEDx talk, that's because the TEDx locally said we're looking for this speakers that'll speak 8 minutes, 12 minutes, what have you. From TED's perspective, unless it's changed since the last time I heard, it always has to be under 18 minutes. So in other words, your talk's always going to be under 18. How short it is beyond that depends on the local organizer. My third one, they asked if anybody's willing to do a 5-minute TED talk, and I said yes. So it could be really short. But again, the takeaway for that side is that it's always going to be a short 18-minute talk or less. And a challenge a lot of people have is, how do I do that? How do I give a full message in 5 minutes without sharing too much. And people either struggle with one or the other. Some people are like, I don't know how I can deliver one message for 18 minutes. And more people are like, how can I shorten my big message to 18 minutes? And that's, by the way, the challenge. And again, there's a very specific way to do that. There's one thing, and again, it's another thing I don't have time to go through today, but there is a structure you can use. And I think, Laura, I shared it last time, if you remember it, up story, remember that down story? There is a structure you can use to deliver what I consider to be a perfectly suited TED Talk and get you to that short amount of time and help you focus around the one idea that can change the world. But for what I can do in this short amount of time, the next thing I want to suggest is, I mentioned earlier to survey people to see if they like your talk and your idea. The second thing you should do is survey people once you have your idea more down and figure out what's working and what's not working. So this would be a smaller group, like a focus group, and I want you to test your idea. That's why a lot of TEDx's will have a speaker coach, and then they'll do multiple Zooms perhaps together where you get to practice your talk over and over again. This is your way to get feedback. So what I'm suggesting is, if you don't get that or have that, or you want to have this ready before you even get accepted, then you can test it with your own audience. Get surveyed answers. Ask people, when I say this, what do you think? Ask, will you listen to my talk? And if they listen and say, I got goosebumps the whole time. So in other words, what I'm saying is test your talk. Another strategy, and this is huge in my opinion, and it sounds like a small thing, and the truth is, from techniques, Lisa mentioned 16 techniques for speaking. I could go over 20 techniques for TEDx, and there's no way I could do that today. And I'm just trying to share you a couple that I feel you could take and use this on anything else, like Facebook Live, another talk, your book, or anything. Use these for those as well. The next piece I want to talk about is, when you're delivering your talk, how many people here have heard of the concept content is king? So we heard the concept content is king. Again, the way the chat works is once you get to 99 and above, it just says 99 plus. So I can't see the comments. I'm guessing most people here have heard of the concept content is king. And so I would agree, content is king, but I will add one caveat: emotional connection is queen. And I believe, from what I've seen over the years, the queen more often than not rules the castle. And the backup to that is, queens out there, they say females make like 85% of the buying decisions in the household. So the queens rule the castle. So and I'm only saying this as a metaphor for you to remember, yes, it's important to have great content, but it's just as important to be connecting with your audience. You notice how I'll use Laura's name. It's only because I can see Laura's face. I can see Heidi's as well. I can't see anybody else's face on the 5 I can see on my screen, including myself. 2 others are not showing. So I'm saying to people I can see, but if I could see all of you, I would say your names and reference. And I always do that. Laura will tell you. I usually, if she's on the screen, I use Laura. If Heidi is, I use Heidi. My point is, that's to hopefully connect you. Notice I asked you chat questions. That's the emotional connection. I'm trying to bring you in so we're all in this together, and it's not just Corey speaking to you. So emotional connection is queen. So remember, when you're presenting, yes, it's important to have great content. Yes, it's just as important or more important to have great connection with the audience, to engage with the audience, to be dynamic, to ask the audience questions. Let me ask you a question amongst yourself. Think this through in your head. If you had the choice to watch a speaker that had great content, but didn't know how to deliver it, and was really boring and was hard to watch, and from your perspective was monotone and what have you, if you had that choice, now again, brilliant content, but didn't know how to deliver it, or you have a speaker who has decent content, not horrible, but decent content, but they can hold you at the palm of their hands, like Lisa Nichols yesterday. How many people here would say they'd rather watch Lisa Nichols read a phone book, or Les Brown read a phone book, than some brilliant people that don't know how to speak and are fully monotone speak a great message? Can't see your answers, but let's just assume your answers are what I think they are. More people would rather watch the passionate person that knows how to speak, that can communicate, that can pull you in, that asks you questions, that involves you. If that's you, then remember that and know that that's most people. So here's the takeaway. Don't get rid of the great content. You want to have great content, but I leave the content off to the side, because that should be the given. That should be the one you focus on anyway. I want you to never forget that you also have to use that content the right way, share the message in the right way, and connect emotionally. And that's what a powerful TEDx does. Bonus that I'll share for delivering a TEDx is understand the power of story. So this is a picture of me when I went to my first sweat lodge ever. And what I discovered in my first sweat lodge, for those that haven't been in a sweat lodge, in a nutshell, is like a small teepee, or it could be a big one, but a teepee where you go in typically, you bring in hot water and rocks, and it's like a sauna, you know, sweat lodge, like you're sweating in there, and you throw hot water and rocks and basically sweat the toxins out. That's in a nutshell. One of the other things about it is no light can be in, meaning it has to be fully dark. And so you're in there, you can't see faces, you can't see reactions, you can't see any of the things we usually see. And remember what they say, it's only 7% is what you say. So if only 7% is what you say and the rest is all your verbal communications, and you're in a sweat lodge and you can't see anything at all, guess what? That 7% of your story has to be really compelling. Well, I was in a sweat lodge and I felt like I knew these, see if my screen is at 4 or 5, 4 people besides myself better than anybody in the world during my sweat lodge based on the power of the stories that were shared in the sweat lodge. That's the power of story. So when it comes to a TED Talk, it should be, in my opinion, built around a powerful story. But your other takeaway around story is a lot of people struggle with sharing too much story. In other words, if I share a story about the first night I performed stand-up comedy, which a lot of you guys have heard the story, and I started without having the mic turned on and bombed horribly, if I share that story, it might be a great story. But if I tell you all the little details, like the color of shoes I was wearing, the shirt I was wearing, what the bartender looked like, and none of them relate to what the message of the story is, would you guys agree I'm either probably going to lose interest with you, or you're going to say, oh, that was an okay story. But so I need to focus on what's important to that story. What's important to that story is how we found out we were going to get on stage without notice, because we didn't know until, you've heard the story, you know what I'm talking about. But we went to a club, we filled the club with people. We found out 5 minutes to showtime, we were the entertainers. We had no material. I went up on a stage, didn't turn the mic on, bombed horribly, et cetera, et cetera. So I share that story. I tell you that how we got there, why I was at the club that night, the fact that we didn't know who was going to be there, like didn't know who the comics were. We found out it was us. I share that I got up on the mic and the guy hit me in the back of the head, and only to tell me after I told 2 jokes that bombed that the mic wasn't turned on. And now I add in that the reason I got up on the stage, because comedy is such a big fear, is I saw a vision when I was sitting by the bar of me as an older man watching other comics saying, I wish I would have done that when I was younger. I had the chance. What I'm saying is that's all you need to know for that story. You don't need to know what I was wearing. You don't need to know what the bartender was saying, etc. So when it comes to your story, trimming out the stuff you don't need to do. How you do this, in my opinion, you either speak it out or write it out, and then go through it and say, what stuff, if I take it out, does the story still work? And remove everything you need to, and still have the story have as much impact. So, storytelling when it comes to a TEDx. Now, I'm not going to go fully into this right yet, but also, as you guys, some of you guys know,
really good,
we have Blue Talks, which is similar to TEDx.
I'm part of Blue Talks. I spoke at Oxford University for Blue Talks.
Everything I told you just now for TEDx, as far as delivery, will apply to a Blue Talk as well.
Yay!
You should be focused on storytelling. You should, and like I said, this is meant for you to use even beyond your TEDx. Every presentation you do in the future. Content is king, but with a Blue Talk, emotional connection should be queen.